Hey everybody, Chris Herman here. On today's episode of On Deck, I am proud to have Grant Zimmerman joining us. Grant is the president and a partner with Hamlin and Associates. Hamlin and Associates is one of the nation's most long-standing and successful direct mail companies serving the retail automotive business. Grant's a really sharp young guy. He's done a lot of great things in his career thus far. And we talk about what can be helpful to dealers during these challenging times, and also what it's like to come into, quite frankly, and help build a successful sales operation. So I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation with Grant Zimmerman. All right, enjoy, everybody. Grant Zimmerman, welcome, man.
Thank you.
How are you?
I'm good.
I asked you right as yeah, go ahead, have a sip.
Thank you.
Grant, you are on deck. I'm glad to see? It's okay to totally screw it up right
Perfect.
right
It's
from
real.
the beginning.
It's real.
Grant, you are president and partner in Hamlin and Associates.
Yes, sir.
Which is the parent company. Of course, there's also Agency Alliance and the...
Backstop Communications.
That's right. I'm curious because we've spoken a number of times, more in like presentations, and I've just had a conversation with John, and I've known John a little bit longer.
Yep.
I'm curious to get a little bit more of your backstory, how you worked your way into the business.
Yeah, my backstory, if you listen to John's, it wouldn't be anywhere near as entertaining. My backstory, I come from a small town in north central Illinois, a place where my family had a business. I expected to, in the long term, take that over at some point in time. Things come together. They had a buyout option, and they took that, which is great because it led me to where I'm at right now, and it's a pretty cool spot.
Yeah.
But I met John. I was actually interning for ADM, Archer Daniels Midland, a big agriculture company. They're worldwide, and I was buying and selling grain, and it was kind of funny. You get into a position where you're making a lot of cold calls, not so much to sell, but to buy. You're trying to acquire. And
to acquire grain?
To acquire grain so that you can turn that on the markets, and you play the futures game, and you learn hedging and everything else. It's interesting.
Way.
But, buying is a lot like selling. And I got hooked on watching Grant Cardone videos, and it's kind of funny, we just talk about whatever it takes. I found John through that. And I followed him on Facebook, and we started kind of having, small conversations here and there. And I still remember, reaching out to him in the night that he took me through a presentation of what is our system. And I was blown away. So I finished my internship with ADM. I got on a plane, flew down, and I spent a couple of days here at the operations of what it was, which is so much different than where we're at right now. It's amazing. But I fell in love with the idea. And from there, it's just been, I moved my fiance and my now fiance, and I moved across the country. Just kind of went all in on the idea of what this really could be. And it's been fun to watch that play out. But yeah, I grew up in a small town, Midwestern kid playing sports here and there, traveling around. Still have a very close, tight group of buddies that we love to get together. They come down here and we kind of try to behave as much as we can. We struggle with that, especially when you got things like Daytona Bike Week and all that.
Right.
It's still, you can wear the suit, but don't let it fool you. We still like to have fun.
Now, when you say North Central Illinois, where is that? Near Bloomington, Peoria, that kind of general area?
Very close, about an hour north of Bloomington. So it's as cornfields as you can get.
I've driven through there because I've driven from there. I think I've driven from there all the way to Chicago.
Yeah.
Chicago's the closest city in that area.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, a little bit east, but yeah.
Okay.
Right,
so yeah, I'm familiar.
There you go.
It's funny. The few times that I've been we used to have a client out in that area. So I used to visit quite a bit, but I always enjoyed if I had the opportunity, or like maybe I went from one meeting to another, just like a nice, quiet, no music drive through the country, through the cornfields, and just like through heartland America. It's
exactly.
Just like, I always found it was like kind of cleans your mind out.
No, I agree with that. I love South Florida and I love where we live, but it's fun to get back to the roots because it's a very different lifestyle.
Right.
But
So how many years? Okay, so you came down, and how many years has it been now?
That was in 2016. So
Okay,
we just turned 5
So
5 years of being down here.
okay. So when you came, and I'll be curious to ask about your previous occupation, right? The internship that you're doing, but you come down, and John presents you like, here's what our company's about. Here's what we do.
Yep.
At that point in time, do you have any knowledge or exposure or experience with car dealers? This is you kind of know how to sell through having to actually buy, and you're like, hey, this is something I can do.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have any connection. I love cars. I've always been a car nut.
Right.
It's just been interesting to me. So that was an immediate draw. The opportunity to work with dealers. It's pretty cool. But I had no connections, no resources, and doing what I did at ADM, that's great. But the real sales part of me started, like we talked about, in a restaurant waiting tables in high school. That's kind of what I did through school. There was a nice restaurant that opened up in small town Mendota, Illinois, when I was I think a junior, and I worked there for about a year. And it was kind of funny. There's the guy who owned the restaurant. He had a Range Rover, and he always commented that I kept my car so clean. And that's just there's a long story about that. It's kind of funny, but so I was always into that. So I started detailing his car. And then he had friends that had nice cars. He wanted them, and all of a sudden my phone started ringing. So I built a little detailing business that far surpassed what I was making at a restaurant. And kind of the entrepreneur mindset was burnt
into you there.
Yeah.
Now, did you start doing so much detailing that you couldn't work in the restaurant anymore, or were you doing both?
Yeah, that happened. That did happen.
Did you tell your boss to do it? Well, this is...
Yeah, it got to the point. I go back to school, and they asked if I was going to come back. I said, no, I'm not. I don't think so.
Right.
But it's funny because my dad has always been so pressed on, you need to, when we were growing up, here, find a job, be a part of something, and that's great. Until you get in it, and you're working nights at an Ace Hardware distribution center, and it's just funny. And we still kept up the detailing side of that, and that far surpassed what we were doing in like the real, W2 world.
Right.
And it was just kind of interesting. But yeah, that's where that really started for me, I think. Once I realized that I could go out and I could communicate with other people who needed something that I had, and I could build $1 from it. That was pretty cool.
So that started at a young age for you, right?
Yeah.
You're out of high school.
17.
Okay, so 17 years old, and you've got this business. Now, were you getting a lot of referrals as a result of the work that you were doing for your boss? And was it coming in, or did you ultimately transition to actually actively going out and seeking business?
Yeah, well put. It was a good mix of both. But it got to the point where, the outreach really came into play. And I look back at those times frequently, and you think about how that kind of laid the path to where, what we're doing now.
Right.
And teaching younger, account executives or people that come into our business and they want to learn how that process works. It's just it's a unique way, to kind of think about the bigger hand that was involved there.
Bringing it back to the retail automotive side, because you've entered into the business 5 years ago. Did you find it to be a challenging business to, it's not for everybody, right? The retail automotive business, particularly when you're in the service side, serving the dealers, it can be challenging for some people because you've got real strong personalities that you're working with. What are some of the things that you went through that perhaps somebody who's just starting off in the field could understand or learn from?
Oh man, I mean, well, here, we all remember the first time that you get hung up on.
Right.
You remember what you felt like after that. And you remember, like I remember being coached by John after these things happen. Anybody in sales remembers their first bad experience, and they remember their last deal.
Right.
But I think the biggest things that we focus on, and anybody who's starting out in this business needs to really hone in and realize that this is not a game of a hard sell. This is a game of building a relationship. And if you can build a relationship, then the relationship withstands times like what we're going through right now with inventory. It can withstand really anything, in my opinion. Because all of a sudden, it's not about pushing or picking up a deal. It's about helping somebody get what they want, and you've got a solution to help them do exactly that. And that's always been my big focus and what we talk about with our guys. Here, build a relationship, don't build a deal.
It's I'm really glad to hear you say that. It's fundamentally how we feel as well too, and that was something that my dad pounded into me. For years it was it's all about the relationships. It's all about the relationships. And there was a time in my career where I was just so focused on doing the work, like you just got to do the work. But it is, and particularly during times like this. I mean, this is a time in our industry where relationships are extremely important.
Yep, agreed.
Because there is this sort of, particularly, on the marketing side, there is a little bit of uncertainty as to when are dealers going to ramp it back up. I mean, I would argue that that time needs to be now. Let's go. Okay. Right. Paid political announcement brought to you by. But seriously, there's, these are times when the relationships really, you really need them.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And that's something where even, whether it's difficult or great, it's something that you can celebrate, together with your clients that you've done a good job building that relationship with. Mm-hmm. It's completely different. We've got people who, are dealers across the country that are like best friends with us. We've got dealers that are like family. We've got dealers who will call us when they need us, and every one of them is great. We appreciate the heck out of all of them, but there's something to be said about a true relationship, and exactly what that looks like when you see it.
So what does it look like? What's at the heart here of a good this ideal relationship with a client?
That's a great question. I mean, I think the biggest thing is that the difference between having a relationship and focused on just the business side of that is taking a true interest. You got somebody who's bringing their family down to Disney World, and I'm an hour away from there, and we coordinate a dinner every time that we can. We get together. It's like you build it's a friendship, just like anything. More so than picking up the phone and begging them to call or begging them to do business with you. You don't have to do that when you've got a friendship, or you got a relationship built with your client. And I think that's something that, if everybody on our team focused on and continue to build that, there's nothing stopping them. They're going to be fantastic.
It's something that we focused on a lot around here too. And, I've always said, and I believe that in our industry, as I'm sure with any other, there's an expectation that if somebody's going to hire you, right, the expectation is you're going to do a great job. Right? That's the expectation, right? So that becomes standard, right? That's not necessarily the differentiating quality about your business or another, right? You guys have a great company. You offer a great product. There are other companies that have great companies that offer great products or services, right? We all have that to some degree. So that's sort of the given. It's that closeness and that caring and really understanding what it is that your client wants to achieve and helping them do that. And that you got to be selfless. That means sometimes, you're not going to make as much money on that. Or, there's times where there's that give and take, or you might say, well, this isn't the best month to use us, right?
Exactly. No, that's very true. Very true.
And, clients, I think, I've always found clients appreciate that, but those are the things that lead to what you're talking about, which is the developing the personal relationship, getting together for dinner, spending time at the store.
Anything. Right. Spending time.
Do you find, now, obviously it's different because none of us have really traveled to stores as much in the last year and a half or been out to as many client dinners. But that being said, do you have clients that when you spend time with them, 15% of the time is business and 85% of the time is the relationship?
Probably even less.
Right?
And that's the same thing. It's taking an interest and being genuine, because it's enjoyable. There's so many awesome people that I've met in the car business across the country. I feel like, I swear to God, every time I go somewhere, I come back with somebody that I look forward to actually, one, helping, but two, getting to know, and that's when that starts. That's been my experience ever since I started doing what I do.
Did you find that there was a process that you went through to get comfortable in that role with client? Was it, or did it come right away?
It was a mix, and I kind of got thrown into it. I remember it's crazy, the big picture of all this, as John and I talk about frequently. But I started in, June of 16, picked up my first group in July of 16, so the next month. And it just so happened that it was the guy who owned the stores was my Little League coach growing up in Mendota, Illinois.
No way.
Yeah, and so he's got 3 stores in that area, and we had everything set up, and I was so green at the point, and it was one of those situations where it's like, here's what we're going to do. John's, we're going to go together, do the training, make sure everybody's kicked off properly, everybody's skilled up, we're ready to go. And 3 days before that, we're going over that, and I'm asking him, okay, what's the plan? And he said, well, okay, what should we do? And I told him, and he said, that sounds great, except one thing, you're missing one big thing here. He says, I'm not going, you're doing it yourself. So I was probably like 25 days in, not even a full month, and I get tossed in, and it's one of those things where you're either going to look like an idiot in front of people who know you, or you're going to figure it out. So that was a sink or swim moment. We've had, with new hires, I try to get them to that moment as quickly as possible.
Right.
Because you're going to find out exactly what you got to work with right then. But I remember that trip, I flew up to Illinois, and I did the training, and it's like, you've experienced it. Anytime you get past that one thing that's on your mind and the one thing that's bothering you and it goes well, you're on top of the world. So the next thing I did was spend the next 2 days in market going out and just seeing stores.
Right.
And it really got to a point where that's when I started realizing if you can just be a normal guy and have a conversation rather than some big scripted pitch, you're going to get so much further ahead, and you're going to work towards building that relationship quicker. So that's kind of how my starting point worked. But it all came from getting kicked off the edge, quite literally.
There's so much to be said for it. Like, don't get me wrong, and I know you agree. Like, you gotta train people, you gotta teach them, you've gotta give people the tools. But fundamentally, particularly in a business such as ours, where there's a lot of pressure, there's a lot of salesmanship, there's a lot of expectation to be able to deliver. You either can do it or you can't, right?
Yeah.
And you gotta find that you can't putz around figuring that out.
Yeah, you can't live in the gray area on that one.
Right. So he just, boom, pushes you in. What did you, okay, so literally I would imagine like you're getting on a plane, you're flying back up to where you're from. Yep. Right. And you're thinking, okay, now I got to make this happen. Right. Was it scary?
Oh God. Yeah. Yeah. At that moment, absolutely. I won't lie.
Right.
Big time. But it's just pounding recordings and going over material. It's the same thing. If you want to get good at something, you got to practice, drill, and rehearse. So it was that, but it was in a period of 72 hours or whatever,
right,
to learn something. So whatever. It was probably one of the best things that could have happened to me, honestly, getting started. Because we've also experienced some people who you let them fall down that path a little bit too long of holding the hand. And that's not beneficial. We've certainly learned that, but it's finding the sweet spot.
You ever just totally crash and burn in one of these situations?
Absolutely. But the cool thing about our business, and you know this too, but nobody knows your system as good as you. Nobody knows my system as good as me.
Right.
So if there was a situation where you get in a hiccup, just move on, because chances are nobody's going to pick it up anyway, and you can always turn back and go back and recover the information. But that's always been the premise that I try to make sure that these guys understand, that just like no one thing ever is going to kill a deal, no one mistake is ever going to hurt your sales training. It's never going to hurt a relationship. You can always build through it.
Mm-hmm.
That's been my belief.
So in your occupation, capacity, position at this point in time, you're managing a team of salespeople, right?
Yes. Sales team, production, data.
All of it, right? What are some of the core things that you think you need to be continually training your people on? Like, what are you focused on process and procedure, or is it more about values and what you guys are about?
That's a great question. I think there's a mix of both that come into play. Mm-hmm. Anything from a simple customer service message, skill, whatever you want to call it, to the true process and procedures that make us good at what we do. and help us do what we do at a fast pace and be very efficient at it too. There's a mix, it's all about building a culture and having a group of people who see the same things that you do in the long term, giving them the resources and things that they need to get that done. You win as a team, you lose as a team, you're going to celebrate, and it's just the way it is around there.
Right.
We want to do everything that we can to help our team win.
What, as you're developing your team, I'm sure you're highly involved in the recruitment and selection of your team. What are some things that you look for in people that you might consider unusual, or just the outside of the normal? Because you get a lot of people come across your desk and you look at the paper and it's like, okay, on paper this person looks good. What are you looking for in somebody who you think could be successful in your organization?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that is unique to every person, and really, it's going to sound funny, but we look for people who have certain experiences, and we look for people who don't have certain experiences. We've had great success with people who are fresh out of college and don't really know much, like me. I didn't know a damn thing about the car business coming into it, and you learn as you go, because the nice thing with that is that you don't have the bad habits that come along with some of those people, or some of the experiences, not even the people, but the experiences that person has gone through in the business. You can kind of avoid that. But we've also had, we've got great team members who have come from the car business, from hospitality industry, really anything. And there's no real one thing on a resume or even a phone call that will dictate this, but it's the character that comes along with these people as you get to know them, and the coachability and the trainability is what's most important to me. The open mindset. Like, we've got, I'll tell you, this is probably the biggest thing that we look for, from an account executive position. If we get a resume from somebody who's out of state, or even, we've got guys from Minnesota, Illinois, Michigan, all over the country, Wisconsin. If they're willing to make the move across the country to come and join our team, it's a pretty safe bet that those people will do whatever it takes to make it work. But again, you can't caveat that without saying that there's local people who are great too.
Right.
It is what it is.
Right.
I don't think that a piece of paper is ever going to tell us what spending some time with them will.
I would imagine, it's been a long time since I was in the retail car business, and while there is a significant sales component to our business here as an agency, we've never had let's call it a sales team. So I don't, even though it is, I don't treat it as a sales operation. But the one thing that I'm curious to get your perspective on, particularly when you're in a company that is trying to generate relationships, right?
Yep.
That can be difficult to train people on, because a lot of people who enter into the sales field are trained in many ways to follow, I have to follow these steps, right, in order to earn the opportunity to present a product, to go through my presentation, to ask the right, qualifying questions, and then hopefully close the deal. That's a very different thing with a younger upstart than teaching them how to be comfortable and confident in their own skin, and to teach them to be confident in being who they are,
right,
so that they can establish a real connection with the client. So is there anything, that's a fucking long-winded question, but is there anything that you do to work with your guys and men and women that work for you to say, hey man, it's just be yourself?
Yeah, and that is absolutely a huge part of that. I had experiences when I first started where you say something or you do something and you get laughed at, because in their eyes it's wrong. I've told everybody that since I started getting into more of a managerial role. So we don't tolerate that. Everybody learns at their own pace. We want to accelerate that. We'll give you the tools to do that. But if somebody is going to screw with you as you're trying to learn something, you can fucking beat it. I don't want you.
Right.
It's just, first of all, it's not being, that's not the kind of human being that you want associated with our company, or with our companies. But it completely tears away the learning environment for what it should be. in my opinion. And like you said, it's not an easy thing to just jump right into.
Mm-hmm.
So it's something where we want to instill that confidence so that anybody can go into that situation with, and with the information and the knowledge that they need to be successful and execute that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
as you look forward, on the retail side of the business, we've talked a little bit about now being, a very unique and challenging time in some ways.
mm-hmm.
As you look forward, over the next 5 years, as you're planning your career and helping the growth of your company and continuing to be a leader within the company, what are some of the things that you're looking to the future as to say, whether it's goals, technologies, different things that you're looking in order to continue to grow your company? What are some of those things?
I mean, our biggest goal, number one, is to always have the mindset of we're going to blaze the trail. We're not going to follow the beaten path. We're going to be the ones that are out there doing it first. We're going to have the best technology in place. There's a reason why we've got the team that we do from a data and software and developing standpoint, because we want to be the ones that if we have an idea at 8 o'clock on a Thursday night, we can have that in place by Friday morning.
Mm-hmm.
And that's always been something that I've been very proud of. Or a dealer, they have an idea that, hey, I like how your software does this. I'm just curious if we could tweak it to do this, would that be something that's realistic? And if it's a good idea and it makes sense to do that and implement it, we certainly will. Most of our great ideas have come from dealers. It's kind of cool. But as you look towards the future, yeah, it's just a matter of, staying out in front, focused on being the best at what we do, the best service, the best product, and just continuing to work for the client, not the other way around.
Well said.
Thanks.
Curious, having grown up in the Midwest
mm-hmm.
and then relocating to North Central Florida, would that be a safe?
Yep.
What have you found any cultural differences, or is there anything in your toolkit coming from the Midwest that has been particularly advantageous? Wow. Had a hard time getting those words out. Particularly advantageous for you. Any differences?
I mean, some things that you've noticed just, from a work ethic standpoint, and that sounds so cliche.
Right.
It's a very laxed community. It's people are easysgoing, which is great. I love Florida. I really do. I don't see myself going anywhere else. But it's just a matter of getting people there. And, the school thing here, this is one that always makes me think. I was at school, our day started at 7:55.
Mm-hmm.
Kids down here, they're not going to school till 9:15. So it's a difference in culture. And
right.
That's cool. Hey, that's fine. But it's just little things like that you notice. But yeah, I mean, advantageous. It's just get up, do the work.
There you go.
Keep it simple.
You guys do, yeah, obviously I know this. You do business all around the country.
Yep.
Do you find any differences, in the dealers that you work with? Let's say you work with Northeastern dealers or Midwestern dealers or, Southern dealers. Are there differences between how people operate that you've noticed?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. As you go to different regions, it's like anything else, personality-wise, some people are a little bit more laid back than others. You go to Alabama and you sit somebody next to, you got 3 guys in a room and one's from Alabama, one's from Florida, and one's from New York. You're going to be able to tell who's from where. And that's the best part about it. I love getting to experience different people from different part of the countries, or different part of our country, just because there's so many differences.
Mm-hmm.
You get somebody from the Northeast who's super ultra aggressive, and that's great. And you get somebody from Alabama who's also the same way, but he just comes off in a little bit different demeanor.
Right.
And you get a woman from Texas who's more aggressive than all of them. But it's just cool, to be able to have that big of a mix. And everybody's, here, we're all driven by the same thing. Just be the best, sell more cars, service more cars, take care of people.
Yeah. Well, you're doing a great job at it.
Thanks.
I know you're on the right track. Any final thoughts that you'd like to share with dealers in terms of what they should be thinking about moving forward over the next, let's call it 3 to 6 months, particularly as it pertains to with what you guys can offer them?
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things. Now is a lot of great opportunities come from some interesting markets.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll say it's an interesting market because for people like you and I, it could be, it's not where we want it to be, but for dealers, it's a great place. So you got to navigate both ends of that. If you don't have the ground stock of 800 cars like you normally do, and it's 200, you still got 200 cars. Okay, and you've still got VINs that are being built right now, and they're inbound, and you can sell to those. Of course, I'm preaching to the choir. The service department, there's all different kinds of ways. I had a guy call me yesterday who he sent me a picture of his lot, and there's literally 0 cars on it, none. And he said his idea to make August work is to literally create service bays on his new car inventory lot and start flooding it that way. So hey, that's what I'm saying. There's no better people than those in the car business. So to have that kind of forward thinking going on, that's great. Here, make it work while it's hot, but just know, we got a plan that fits regardless of the market conditions. Our focus, this has never been on the $199 lease special.
Right.
It's been on helping a consumer find the right path to improve their situation. And anytime we can do that, it could be, like we were talking about at lunch, it could be a nuclear fallout. It's still a situation where we can help somebody get into a better spot.
See, that's a really important message, Grant, is that there's, and car people, men and women, are fantastic at finding the opportunity in every situation. But if you have that mentality, and I think this is something that really should be driven home, the mentality of, as long as we have the opportunity to help somebody's situation, right, then we're fine.
Yep.
And there's almost always an opportunity to help somebody.
Totally.
Right? In whether it's in business, in life, whether it's within your own organization, it's a really important thing, and I think not everybody has that mindset, because too many people, I think, are sometimes just looking at, they want to make a sale.
Right. There's
income to be earned. There's pressure to earn income.
Right.
But that shift in mentality to, as long as there's an opportunity for us to help somebody, then that's...
And if you're truly focused on helping people, you don't have to worry about things like CSI. You don't have to worry about the big picture things that are going to follow you down the road further than this deal right now, today. So that's always been our focus, Think long term, focus on today, and it all comes together.
Yep, I agree. Grant, thanks, man.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. It's been good talking to you. We'll do this again sometime.
Love it.
You're doing the right things.
Thanks, Chris.
All right, man. Cheers.
Cheers.
Peace.